Welcome to Voices,
a podcast from the Institute for Human Rights and Business.
Here, we're seeking to elevate the range of perspectives
on the role of business in the world
and in people's everyday lives.
Hello, everybody. My name is Francesca Fairbairn, and I work for the Institute for Human Rights and Business. And today I'm talking to Dr. Kate Pike, who's Associate Professor Emeritus at Solent University. Kate has been working on maritime issues and more particularly mental health of seafarers for almost 20 years. And she's currently leading the research element of the Social Interaction Matters Project, which is an ISWAN initiative and sponsored by the MCN Red Ensign Group. And we'll come back to that and you can give us some more detail on that, Kate. But first of all, welcome and thank you very much for doing the podcast.
Hello, Francesca. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
So I'd just like to ask you first, from the research that you're currently doing and have been doing in the past, what you see as the main issues impacting seafarers' mental health. Now, obviously, just to give a bit of context for listeners, there are mental health issues that should be addressed among seafarers at all times, but they have been drawn into sharp relief since the crew change crisis that's been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has gotten gradually worse, or certainly hasn't got better from March, April 2020 up to February 2021, which is where we are now, where because of COVID restrictions at ports around the world, seafarers have been unable to disembark ships in order to go home and be replaced by other seafarers. So they've essentially been stuck on board in situations that can, in some circumstances be described as forced labor, often up to 2 years, so well over a year beyond their contracts. So, Kate, yes, if you could tell me within the context of that and more generally what you see as the main issues impacting seafarers' mental health.
Yes, right. As you pointed out, COVID and the pandemic has really highlighted some of the issues that have always been there for seafarers regarding mental health. But it's brought it into sharp focus. And primarily, this is around the lack of certainty about when contracts might finish. And this can produce anxiety and low mood, low performance. And of course, that would have safety implications on board. But also, for seafarers, they are socially isolated, just on board for the duration of their voyage, the contract. And this can be doubled in terms of isolation if you are the only one of your nationality, for example, where you might have language barriers to overcome as well, and no one of your own nationality to mix with. Again, that might be the same if you're the only woman on board as well. But then for mental health and seafarers, I think the key problem is that they're often very tired at sea because they have very high workloads. The port turnarounds can be quite quick these days. It's all about getting the cargo off the ship and then back onto the ship. And we do see more and more, we do hear about burnout more and more, and this can cause really bad fatigue, which is very demotivational, can cause issues with work safety and so on. And I suppose the other area to think about is the external contact. Not being able to get off ships at the moment is quite common. Leaving the ship in port, no port visits from chaplains. I know that chaplains are doing this where possible, but it's been heavily restricted due to port restrictions and the national lockdowns that we're seeing at the moment. So there is a need to create more downtime for seafarers, which is one of the reasons why we're working on the Social Interaction Matters project with ISWAN at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? There must be also, while they're at sea and unable to disembark, periods of kind of extended boredom followed by periods of frenetic work. So just thinking about external contact, do these seafarers, when they come into port to, offload or onload cargo, do they have the opportunity under normal circumstances to go into the port town, and have some downtime away from the ship ordinarily?
Again, that would depend on where the ship has docked. So some ports would allow seafarers to come off the ship, and others won't due to port security. And there's a few things around that. Sometimes it's to do with nationality of the seafarers and whether they got the correct visas, even though that shouldn't really be an issue. And secondly, the amount of time in port can be so small that by the time the cargo's been loaded and unloaded, there isn't really much time for anything to happen. And getting from the ship all the way through the port and out into, because some of these ports are located quite a long way from city centres often, sometimes it's just not worth them getting off the ship just to go and find a town and come back again. So yes, in theory that should happen, but it doesn't always, even under normal circumstances.
Right. And so at the moment, there are no visits from anyone, and presumably kind of organizations like Mission to Seafarers and ISWAN are the types of organization that provide support and welfare to these seafarers. I wonder if maybe you could tell me a little bit more about ISWAN in general, the SIM project in particular, and some of the initiatives that they're putting in place to try and provide support for seafarers under the current circumstances and more generally.
Of course, yeah. Those two, ISWAN and the Mission to Seafarers, are two really key organisations in providing welfare, but there are other charities and organisations that do provide some really good support for seafarers. In terms of ISWAN's help and support, they provide a 24-hour helpline for seafarers, so that any issue, day or night, seafarers can get in touch with the network and support group and just have a conversation with someone. ISWAN are also doing huge amounts in terms of helping seafarers. One of the projects that I'm currently working on is the Social Interaction Matters project, where we're looking at the value of social interaction, getting crews together to, in their downtime, to just enjoy each other's company and activities outside of work. And these have had really good benefits for mental health in terms of, getting people to know each other a bit better, having someone to talk to, and developing those relationships, so that if you start to feel down, people can spot that. Not only can they spot it, that something can be done about it in time, hopefully, before it gets too bad. ISWAN also run other initiatives. There's a Seafarers Mental Health and Wellbeing, and they've done this in conjunction with KVH Videotel. They've got a free mental health training package. There's also the Mentally Healthy Ships that ISWAN's running. So there's many good initiatives from them. Yeah.
Funnily enough, yes, there are many other organisations doing amazing work, not least the International Transport Workers Federation. And in fact, the ITF Seafarers Trust has curated a photo library of seafarers who are currently stranded or unable to disembark their ships, which I recommend people looking up. But what would you say, what are some of the issues that stop these seafarers being able to sort of socialize? I think probably Wi-Fi is one of the issues, isn't it?
Oh, Wi-Fi. Yeah, Wi-Fi provides a really interesting area of controversy. Some people will tell you that Wi-Fi is the kind of area where you are not going to get any interaction. People would rather go to their cabins and use Wi-Fi there and not interact with other people. But I think most of the seafarers we surveyed were very adamant that Wi-Fi was good for social interaction. It helped them communicate with their families and friends at home. And also on board, it can be used for playing games together, starting up WhatsApp groups and that kind of thing. So actually, the younger generation tend to, gravitate to Wi-Fi and the socialization through it, and use it in those ways. And we've seen some really positive benefits from it. from it working well as well, particularly where it's on board for free in certain companies.
And so the issue would be that on some ships it's either not available, or if it is, it's not free. They have to pay for it. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. And actually, in the survey that we ran as part of the SIM project, we saw that actually there was really a low free accessibility to Wi-Fi. And many people had to pay for it if it was there at all in the first place.
And so, given that we're the Institute for Human Rights and Business, we're always looking for seeing what businesses can do in order to address human rights impacts. And I guess, so my last question to you would be, in the grander picture, particularly in relation to the crew change crisis, there have been various initiatives, the latest of which is the Neptune Declaration, which has 420 signatories so far and is calling for governments and port authorities to categorize seafarers as key workers and give them priority for vaccines, etc., so that they can get on and off board ships in a timely manner. But it's kind of specifically in terms of mental health and the organizations that could have a role to play, what do you think their priorities should be in relation to seafarers' mental health, Kate?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and there's a lot of areas that could be looked at. I think one of the main ones would be on leadership training, not focusing just on technical skills, but the non-technical training that specifically around the soft skills, as you might call them, leadership skills that consider people and how to lead people well, developing good teams on board that support each other. And I think that leadership and the willingness for making social interaction as a priority on board and helping people to do their jobs more effectively is really, really important, and sometimes overlooked by shipping companies. So I think there's a big piece of work to be done there. It's interesting that you mentioned the Neptune Declaration. I think it's a really great start and fantastic that it's got so many signatories. But now we need to see some action behind the initiatives that have been laid out there and the good work that people have signed up to. We need to see that coming to some sort of fruition.
Indeed, and presumably, just back to the leadership training, that would be for onshore staff as well, and then kind of looking at the policies that are within either, I don't know, a shipping company or shipping management company, or perhaps there's leverage that cargo owners can bring to bear. I think in particular kind of charterers who may charter either a whole vessel or part of it, that they can insist in their codes of conduct or contractual requirements that, for example, crew have free Wi-Fi or access to a chaplain or whatever it is.
Yes, and I think that's right. And you made a good point. It should be not just for the leaders on board, but also onshore. There's many areas that could be incorporated into that. And I just wonder if I could go back to the chaplain services that we
Sure.
know about in ports. They've had to adapt quite significantly to the COVID situation, where quite a lot of the time they're not allowed on board anymore. And we know that Mission to Seafarers in particular are doing some great work around this, where they've adapted and putting in kind of training courses. They are starting something called We Care Wellbeing courses. And there is also a chat to the chaplain where you can text the chaplain and get a quick response. And they often end up in actual conversations through phone or Skype or something. So there's some really good work out there, but it's a question of putting these really good practice together and making sure that it's across the board and not just isolated pockets. So bringing people together to put these good initiatives in place.
Yeah, I mean, one would assume that it's harder to reach those people who are already isolated because they don't have access to things like this. And I would have thought the other thing is that there are probably quite a lot of crew from countries like Russia, China, where kind of it sounds like chat to a chaplain is a kind of possibly a sort of Christian organization. So presumably there are equivalent organizations that are non-Christian where such seafarers can turn.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying that missions of seafarers, although it says chat to the chaplain, it can be, they don't have to have their chaplain hat on when they're talking to seafarers, and they do get calls from everybody. And of course, that's where ISWAN can help out as well, just providing a service where people are there to listen to seafarers and hopefully act on their conversations. And you've got the unions doing some really excellent work as well.
Yes, I mean ITF doing incredible work, and they've got lots of kind of helplines for seafarers in terms of their mental health, and in practical terms, in trying to get them off ships and home, essentially kind of acting as a sort of travel agent for tens of thousands of seafarers who otherwise can't get off the ships. Okay, thank you very much for talking to me today, Kate. Here's hoping that the Neptune Declaration has some real impact, because there have been declarations by the UN General Assembly, the ILO, the International Maritime Organization, and so on. And yet still there are 400,000 stranded seafarers. And then obviously the equivalent, another possibly 400,000 seafarers at home unable to work. As the UN Global Compact looks at it. So let's hope that the Neptune Declaration has some success, and these numbers can begin to go down, and things put in place because of the COVID crisis will last beyond it, and that will contribute long-term to improve mental health of seafarers, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, wise words. And the sustainability of this programme is the main thing, that it goes beyond what we're seeing today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate, and good luck with ISWAN and the SIM project in particular.
Thank you, Francesca.